suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a beautiful Friday evening slash nights. Just a minute to the top of the hour, 9 p.m. And today we do come early to get done our Premier preview ahead of match day 6 of the Premier League. And yeah, I hope you do indulge me on this one as we go further in today's discussion. Yesterday, we did, was it yesterday night or today morning? I think yesterday or something, in the morning, possibly. We did a few things about it. We had a discussion on some games and things like that. But yeah, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you do join us for this discussion, and I hope it will be a fruitful discussion. Oh, apologies. Just need to test our audios, make sure everything does check out and everything in that line. It's a bit of a necessary evil because we've burnt our fingers on more occasions than one. So it's only proper that we get things in line before we get into our routine discussion. So yeah, match day 6 of the Premier League is what we'll be talking about, and any other news that may be worth the salt. We'll be giving you our analysis, our insights, our predictions, and things in that regard. So, but for now, again, I'm trying to. Okay. I don't know. For some reason, I feel my voice is low, but you will forgive me. I've been struggling with the cold, so I'll do my best to be as loud as possible. But in case you can't hear me well, please let me know. But I don't know if it has anything to do with the microphone, but I feel like the voice is a bit down. I feel like the voice is a bit down. Usually that's not the case. Anyways, I will continue. So, I mean, where do we start? Let's start from the Ugandan front because there is some news that has come through. There is some news that has come through regarding the gigantic clubs, regarding the record league holders of Sports Club Villa and the reigning champions of Vipers Sports Club, that apparently those two clubs were in objection to the new league format in talks with Tanzania over joining their league. Now, that's some big news, that's some serious allegation. In any case, if it is true, so that's what is happening. Because we know for a fact that that's AC Villa and Vipers are opposed to the new league format, as well as NEC. They are all opposed to the idea of the new league format. So it's a bit tricky. It's a bit tricky, It's a bit tricky for them. Okay, what we know is, for example, the Uganda Premier League through the Federation of Uganda Football Associations, that FUFA, they introduced a new league format. In that new league format, they said they will be playing, instead of playing what we've come to know traditionally, the league being a round robin, where you get to play home and away, it's going to be played in multiple phases. And in the first phase, for example, it will be, of course, it's supposed to be 16 teams in the league. In those 16 teams, they're supposed to play each other at least once. The way the UEFA Champions League new format is, you only get to play the opponent once. It's either at your home, at your own turf, or you play them away from home. So it is what it is. So those results will be compiled the way the UEFA Champions League format is at the league stage, at the group stage, at the league stage. And then we will have a table of 16 teams. Now, at the end of that, that table will give us two categories, the top 8 and the bottom 8. So then we go to round 2. Now, at round 2, the bottom 8 will be in Group A, quote unquote, Group A or Pot A, and then they will play a round robin. Same applies to the other bottom 8. They'll have to play a round robin, and then out of those two groups, for Group A, which is the top 8, we then get to have the top 6, who then advance to the third round. Now, for the teams that are in Group B or the second pot, they will play again a round robin. And then, why so early, Robert? I'm struggling with the cold, so I decided we should get the Premier League preview underway, and we'll have the conversation so that you guys do not miss out. So that's why we started early. But thank you so much, LFC, for joining us. I know it's about 7 minutes past the hour, 7 p.m. for you, so you can get to bed early. Not really. It's not really about getting to bed early. I'm struggling with a bit of a cold, so I've considered it in a manner that as time goes on, maybe I'm experiencing a bit of a headache, a cold, and so I do not want to struggle in the next hours. I wanted to do it while I still have some vigor and energy. But yeah, I hope you do join me as we discuss the weekend preview. But we've kick-started things from the Ugandan side, where there are changes going on in our own league. So at the third round, after the first round, after the second round, that's for the teams in Group B, we'll have the top 6, and then the 2 will be straight away relegated, and then we'll move on to the third round. Now, the third round, for the top 6 teams from Group A, they will play a round robin. Sorry, they won't play a round robin, they will play a single game. So if we played in the first round, if you played a certain team at home, this time around and you made it round 3, you play them away from home, like that. And then the top most team will win the league. I mean, it's some nonsensical, complicated kind of thing, in my opinion. A change that we did not need. So, yeah, basically that's what's happening. Basically that's what's happening. So you have one of the most elite teams, or the 2 elite teams in the league, Sports Club Villa being one, the record league winners with 17 trophies. I think Vipers have a tally of 6 to their name. Choosing to say, why don't we request the Tanzania Premier League and we go and play in the league? And I mean, that's quite a, I don't want to call it a stretch. They're only weighing their options. They know they cannot create their own league. I mean, that wouldn't be the solution. And yet they feel they've not been listened to. The clubs that were supposed to be on their side as fellow clubs, they had their officials threatened. Whoever was opposed to the idea of the new league format was branded as an opposition figure, which doesn't frame well, and people were threatened. In some cases, monies were promised and things like that. There seemed an urgency, a rush to, get this new league format underway. More like the Federation of Uganda Football Associations has something to hide. They're trying to sell something so quickly. Have you ever bought something from a street vendor, and after buying it, they run away so fast? That's when you know something is not right. And cross-check, and then something is faulty, and then you cannot get to them. Basically, that's what the Uganda Federation of Football Associations is trying to do, or has tried to do in this case. In any case, the league itself has kicked off, I think, today. That's the Uganda Premier League, and it's not pretty, really. It's not pretty in as far as those things are. I, for one, am opposed to the idea of the new league format. I'm opposed to the whole, rush changes and things like that. And yet the federation is hell bent on getting things underway. I mean, it is what it is. Fans are not so welcoming to it, but for me, it's just a one man's opinion. It's just a one man's opinion. The other time, The other time, the Federation of Ghana Football Associations met with stakeholders, including the league sponsors, and that was from Star Times and others. So, anyways, the season has kicked off as of today. Bull shared the spoils with the Uganda Revenue Authority in a goalless draw. Buhimba United Saints beat up against Entebbe UPC by a goal to nil. Kitara shared the spoils with KCCA, one of the most successful clubs in the league. That's KCCA. They shared the spoils in a 1-1 draw. Bugazi beat up against Calvary by 3-1. Police FC and Barra City shared the spoils in a 1-1 draw, while later in fact, in the ongoing game at Ham Stadium in Nachivubo, Express FC up against the UPDF. That's the team for the Ugandan Army. And Express FC lead that game by a goal to nil at halftime. So, anyways, it is what it is in that regard. For me, I think, and you see the advantage, the reason as why I want to be on the side of Dr. Loris Mourinho, the president of Vipers Football Club, and Omar Mandela, the president of Sports Club Villa, as people that are investing in the game that do continuously invest so much. Is that they're not entirely opposed to the idea of a changing of the league format. They are saying, let's first wait. We do not necessarily have to implement it this season. People have thrown around the money card as though if they give them the money in the old league format, it shouldn't apply, and things like that. I mean, they're saying, go test it out with the lower leagues, go test it out in the women's football. If it's successful, let's have full-blown engagements, let's have contributions, let's look at the modalities, if there are things we disagree on, let's iron that out over the course of the next 2 years, and then maybe you can adopt it once if it gets the buy-in and like that. But the Federation of Uganda Football Association is led by its own dictator, in my opinion. That's Moses Magogo. And the reason as why I use the word dictator is very, very intentional, by the way. It's very, very intentional. Why? Because every time we hear that somebody is opposed to their ideas, their way of selling them that idea is bullying them into something, is sort of strong arming them into, their way of doing something. And trust me, I believe it without an ounce of that, but there is a catch for the Federation of Ghana Football Association, or at least a small cocoon of people who think that football should be about them and that without them, football can never be. And yet, it's a game we all enjoy. I'm not one that goes to the stadiums to watch the domestic league. I have my own reservations. I've said those for quite a good number of times, but I appreciate it for what it is. It's football. Fans go out there and enjoy it. KCCA are building a stadium because it's an investment. Dr. Loris Mourinho has built St. Mary's Stadium, and things like that. So, but anyways, it is what it is. Let's see what that implies. If there's any truth to it, we'll get to find out in the near future. And meanwhile, there's some bad news coming out of Barcelona that the goalkeeper Joan Garcia will be out for 4 to 6 weeks after undergoing an arthroscopy. Barcelona goalkeeper will miss the PSG game. That means that Vokshek Szczesny will be called back into action for the next fortnight. For the next 1 month or so, or 1.5 months. The beauty of it is that soon we'll be going for the international break after I think the first weekend of October. Yes, that's next weekend. So that in itself, although it doesn't help much, but at least it means that the player doesn't miss so many games out. This news comes on the wake of the fact that they have already lost. They've already lost Gavi for about 4 to 5 months through injury. So that's also not good. Anyways, quickly, let's run away from that. Let's go to the other to the gist of our conversation this evening, and that's everything to do with the Premier League. for match day 6 that gets underway tomorrow with Manchester United coming in the early kickoff. So I'll give you the run of fixtures and then we'll start to digest them one at a time. Not all of them, but I'll be giving you at least all my predictions for all. We did discuss some of them in the morning. Was it in the morning or yesterday night? I think yesterday night. No, in the morning because yesterday night we were doing a watch along for that Barcelona game in which they beat up against Real Oviedo by 3-1. So at 2:30 p.m., Manchester United will be away to Brentford at the GTEC Stadium, while Chelsea at 5 p.m. will be at home against Brighton. Crystal Palace take on Liverpool at 5 p.m. Leeds United will take on Bournemouth, while Manchester City will be at home against Burnley. Nottingham Forest will be at home against Sunderland, while Tottenham Hotspur will welcome Wolverhampton Wanderers. On Super Sunday, Aston Villa will be up against Fulham, while Newcastle United will take on Arsenal. And on Monday Night Football, Everton will be up against West Ham United. So that's the run of fixtures that will be coming your way on the different days and hours of kickoff. So that means we have 7 games to be played on Saturday and 2 games on Sunday and 1 other game on Monday. I remember it's in the subsequent week that we do have the return of the UEFA Champions League, having skipped that 1 week where we had the EFL Cup for the English teams, while the Spanish La Liga continue to indulge themselves with the continuation of their own league. So we'll start things off at St. James's Park, where Arsenal will go on Super Sunday at 6:30 p.m. to take on Arsenal. This is a very, very huge contest of a game. We know for a fact that it's been a bit of a difficult start for both teams, if we are being honest. Even though Arsenal are second on the Premier League table, the kinds of games that they've had to play have not been easy. If you start the opening 5 fixtures of the season, and you have 2 trips away to Manchester. You have a trip away to Manchester United, a trip away to Anfield, and a home game against Manchester City, and it doesn't come more harder than that. While Newcastle on the other side, while they've not had the most difficult start, it hasn't been the easiest as well. It has been hard in the sense of what transpired for them in the transfer window that they've had to transpose into the start of the season to give them what I would call less ideal results that have put them 13th on the Premier League table, having managed only 1 victory, 4 draws, 3 draws and 1 loss. So you can see that on paper, they're really not so bad. They've only lost 1 game. That game came against the reigning champions on match day 2 against Liverpool when they lost by 3-2. But they've had 3 goalless draws and a 1-0 victory against Wolverhampton Wanderers. So you must feel for Ed Howe, I do not want to call it frustration because we know what happened in the summer. They missed out on majority of their targets. They ended up signing some good players, players like Morgan Rogers, players like Jacob Ramsey from Aston Villa, players like Anthony Elanga from Nottingham Forest, players like Malik Theo from AC Milan, the defender, players like Aaron Ramsdale, the goalkeeper from Southampton, players like Nick Bolt-Mada from Stuttgart, and things like that. So they managed to bring in a couple of signings, including Yohan Wissa, who has been out through injury ever since the previous international break. So it's been a bit of a difficult start. In comparison, on the other side, Arsenal, like I said, they've had it difficult. They've managed to win away to Manchester United by 0-0, beat up against Leeds United by 5-0. On match day 2, lost to Liverpool on match day 3 by 0-0, beat up against Nottingham Forest by 3-0 before sharing the spoils at home against Manchester City last weekend. So it's been a bit of a difficult start for the Gunners, but while they sort of adjust because they've received a lot of their fair share of criticism in regards to how they've applied themselves in some of these games, particularly in 2 games against Liverpool and against Manchester City, where some pundits, even football fans, think that Arsenal could have done more to win those games. And maybe they're right, maybe not. But you also must contend to the fact that Arsenal are also trying to adapt with the chemistry of these new players that they are having to, fit into their system. When you look at that backline, there's not been one too many changes, and that's why they've managed to remain solid. When you come to the midfield, you have a significant change of your pivot in Martin Zubimendi coming in. While he's fitted well into the team, you get to feel that that bit of chemistry between him and Declan Rice is still sort of lacking. And for all the criticism we've laid upon Mikel Arteta for fielding Mikel Merino as a midfielder, something that does not work out really, because in about apparently 11 games where he started for Arsenal as in that midfield role, they've won about 11 games, they've only managed to win one. So maybe Mikel Arteta hoped that maybe given the existing history between Martin Zubimendi and Mikel Merino, given that they played together before at Real Sociedad, will give them an easiness to play with each other. But that has not been the case. So he got that criticism when they played away to Liverpool and at home last weekend against Manchester City, something that he changed at halftime, withdrawing Mikel Merino for Eberechi Eze. So while the criticism in its own nature is valid, or by the assessment of it, that you're putting a player that is not capable of playing as a 10. I mean, every time he's been deployed as a 10, he's failed at that. I do not think he's good as a 10. Maybe he is good as an 8, even though that's a bit debatable because I feel he's too slow, but he's even more slower for number 10. 2, he's not the best of the link-up play kind of guy, or stringing those, long passes, short passes, nibbling on the ball, dribbling one. They are trying to create spaces and things like that. But I do not think that's his strongest suit. On the other side, you have Mikel Arteta, who is thinking to himself, I have Noni Madueke, new to the team. Bukayo Saka is out injured. I have Victor Gyökeres, my target man, is a new man. I have Martin Zubimendi is a new man. So if I put in Eberechi Eze as a new player, then it makes it a bit difficult. And then for me, I argue, why not Ethan Nwaneri? I mean, while he's not the most stellar of players, we know he's capable of playing in that attacking midfield role. In fact, that's why he would prefer to play as a 10. So why not use him for that? So going into the weekend, I think Mikel Arteta is sort of going to be, I don't know if he will be conflicted, but I think he will be between what he believes should work for the team and what vis-a-vis the kind of criticism that has been leveled against him so far, in his preference to play Mikel Merino in that role for 2 games, actually 3 games. And because in his defense, in the aftermath of that 1-1 draw against Manchester City, the question he was putting to reporters was that you did not ask me this thing when we played away to Bilbao because they won by 2-0. But what he forgets is that they needed 2 second half substitutes in Gabriel Martinelli and Leandro Trossard to still win that game. So that means right from the onset, their creativity was suffering, even against Bilbao. So anyways, knowing how stubborn Mikel Arteta is as a manager and the strong conviction he has in his beliefs, and maybe in part the kind of analysis he takes to games, I wouldn't be surprised if he does field Mikel Merino still in that midfield over the weekend. However, my opinion would be that field a more fluid player. Now, the challenge is that they're going to go away to Newcastle against a very, very physical, bullish side that we know of Newcastle. We know how they set up. With sometimes with the back 3, with the back 4. It could be Fabian Schär, Dan Burns, Steven Botman, Kieran Trippier, Tino Livramento, whichever the case, in that back line of 4, Nick Pope in goal. Then the midfield, Sandro Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, and Shellington. Shellington recently recovered from injury. In fact, scored a brace against Bradford City as they knocked out them out of the Carabao Cup by 4-1. So you look at that, and particularly the physique of that midfield of Shellington, Bruno Guimaraes, and Sandro Tonali is one that they need to contend with. And then the athleticism of Anthony Gordon, who has been starting in some games as their target man with Harvey Barnes and Anthony Elanga. The speed of Anthony Elanga is something that Arsenal will have to be wary of. The space of Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes, they're very, very electric on the counter. And we know that at Newcastle, they've played with that strategy where they choose to play with the low block and catch Arsenal on the counter, because they know when Arsenal dominated the ball, they push so further up and they sort of leave themselves vulnerable at the back, especially when you have their centre backs in Gabriel Magalhaes and William Saliba, or whichever the partners are, pushing beyond the center line. So which makes it easy to exploit them on the counter because they're not the fastest of defenders and something like that. So Arsenal will, bearing in mind that Mikel Arteta knows that his players will have to contend with that kind of physicality in midfield, is the reason as to why you would want to field Mikel Merino. But in my view, I'm thinking to myself, if you're going to have, first of all, and because we know that Ebeleche Eze has his defensive inefficiencies as well as Ethan Wanyeri. And that for me is what tells me that the two shouldn't be fielded in the same game away from home. He did it, he tried it away at Port Vale, where he fielded Christian Nogat, Ethan Wanyeri, and Ebeleche Eze in that composition of midfield three. Then he had Mikel Merino leading the line. Then he had Bukayo Saka and who was it on the other side? I'm forgetting. Was it Gabriel Martinelli? Yes, Gabriel Martinelli on the other side. So I'm thinking to myself, if you're Mikel Arteta, of course your backline doesn't change. From what have played against Manchester City, we expect David Ryan goal. We do expect William Saliba alongside Gabriel Magalhaes. We expect Ricardo Carafiori. We expect Jurrien Timber at right back. In midfield, Martin Zubimendi, Declan Rice. For me, they have to start those two. Then, while Martin Odegaard has returned to training, we do not know whether he will be fully fit enough to start that kind of game. I wouldn't be quick to risk him, given that he's only going to have 2 days of training. I wouldn't risk him unless we are getting, there's more to the story in regards to his training and recovery from that shoulder injury, which appears to be recurring. Then maybe they can risk it. But for me, I would say do not start him. So Mikel Arteta has to do this. He has to make a decision on who starts as a 10 in between Ethan Wanyeri and Ebeleche Eze, knowing that if he start with both, their counter press is not going to be as productive because it's not their strongest suit. In any case, it's one of their weaknesses. So if you're going to play against a team like Newcastle, who you know are very, very boggy side, especially playing them away from home, then you know that I'll go with, particularly personally, I'll go with Ebeleche Eze playing as my 10. I'll go with Gabriel Martinelli because I know he can deliver in terms of helping Jurrien Timber on defensive tracking back and things like that. Then Bukayo Saka on the other side, and then Victor Gyökeres to lead the lines. So my substitutes, then depending on how the game goes, I would have Ethan Wanyeri, Leandro Trossard, Max Doman, Martin Odegaard if he can make the bench and things like that, or whichever, the Christian Nogats, Ben White, etc. So with that said, that's how I would set up I'll be telling Ebeleche Eze, look to release Victor Gyökeres as fast as possible. Same message I'll give to Martinelli, same message I'll give to Bukayo Saka, same message I'll give to Ricardo Carafiori, Martin Zubimendi, whichever. Let's look to release the ball quicker to Victor Gyökeres if he's our target man. So physically, when you play with Martin Zubimendi, I do not know how much he will be able to contend with the physicality of Newcastle. Yes, he's so far fared well with the Premier League, but Newcastle can tend to be a different different beast. They know how to, nick your ankles, clip on you, things like that, clip your calves, and that kind of thing. So, but you've got to take a risk. You've got to take a risk and do not be more reserved. What I would tell us, my players, particularly, is let's say play a back three, and in the back three, in the sense of the offense, so that we do not leave ourselves too vulnerable to a counter attack. That means Gabriel Magalhaes, William Saliba, and Jurrien Timber stay behind, as Ricardo Carafiori inverts in the midfield to help Bukayo Saka, to help Declan Rice and Martin Zubimendi, and we form that belt. And then we know that Declan Rice pushes further forward. Even Ricardo Carafiori to come and help, depending on the zone of play or how we create those combinations, try and create overloads on the right and the left, and then also balance play on the right and left, as opposed to their overall dominancy or over-reliance on that right wing. So, and things like that. That's how I would go about it. In terms of the last 5 league meetings between these two sides, it's been it's been one hell of a battle. But Arsenal retained the lion's share of victories because they've won 3 out of the last 5 and lost 2. So there's not been any draws. Last season, each side won their own fixture by 1-0. That's at home for the either sides respectively. Declan Rice squad on the 18th May as Arsenal beat up against Newcastle, while in the reverse fixture it was Alexander Isak's goal that had decided the tie. Then you go back to last season, but one when Arsenal put 4 up as Newcastle United, while they had lost the earlier fixture by a goal to nil away to St James's Park. The last time they went away to St James's Park, you have to go back to May 2023 when they beat Newcastle by 2 goals to nil. So they are capable of winning at St James's Park. It's just not come as often as they would have hoped, because in addition to losing at home away to St James's Park last season, they also got beat home and away in the Carabao Cup by 2 goals to nil in the 2 respective fixtures. So they'll have to bear that in mind, that this is a Newcastle side that is capable of beating up against them. The only disadvantage for Newcastle and the advantage for Arsenal is that they will have to do it without Alexander Isak, who was very, very pivotal in all those victories. So that for me is going to be the case. I'm not so sold. I'm not so convinced that Arsenal go out to St. James's Park and win. I got this gut feeling that they could share the spoils in a 1-1 draw, given how combative Newcastle may want to be, given how we've seen Arsenal sort of play in a timid manner when it comes to going forward. You expect them to dominate possession, but again, they keep knocking the ball around, sideways, back to midfield, back pass to the defenders, goalkeeper, sideways, like that, without any so much of an end result. And yet for me, I'm always thinking to myself, every time you get into that middle final third, look to move a body away or two and try and shoot from distance, because it's not all the time that you're going to get your goal by, literally walking that ball into the back of the net. So that's my feelings about that. But anyways, we will see. We will see how things will go in that regard. But like I said, Newcastle are 13th on the Premier League log with about 6 points. 3 draws, 1 victory, and 1 loss to their name as compared to Arsenal's 10. And remember, Arsenal going into that fixture perhaps with a bit of pressure, because Liverpool may have one away to Crystal Palace, which will create an 8-point gap between them and Liverpool. Manchester United may have one away to Brentford. Manchester City may have beaten up against Burnley, so that means all those will be on a tally of 10 points. Tottenham Hotspur may have beaten up against Wolverhampton Wanderers, so that will put them 3 points above Arsenal. Bournemouth may have one away to Leeds United, so it may come with that bit of pressure in itself. But yeah, those are my feelings and expectations for that game going into the weekend. The other game that I want us to look at is that game between the reigning champions and Liverpool and Crystal Palace. While it does promise to be a very, very entertaining fixture, and that Oliver Glasson has proved to us in more ways than not that he's capable of beating up against the big boys, Liverpool is a little too strong. Over the years has proved a little one too strong for Crystal Palace. But Crystal Palace tend to be a bogey side for Liverpool as well. So, for example, particularly when you look at their last 5 meetings, you could see that last season they forced Liverpool into a 1-1 draw. That was at Anfield. Possibly the last game of the season, just before Liverpool were handed their league title, and then Liverpool beat them at Selhurst Park by a goal to nil. Then when you go back to last season, but one, Crystal Palace beat up against Liverpool at Anfield by a goal to nil. Then Liverpool won away at Selhurst Park by 2 goals to 1. So then when you wind things back, there was a goalless draw. So it's that kind of fixture that often doesn't deliver as many goals as you'd love to see it deliver. It's the kind of fixture that is going to come in the absence of Hugo Ekitike, who got himself a red card as they beat up against Southampton by 2 goals to 1 to advance to the fourth round of the EFL Cup. Very, very stupid red card because he was already booked to a yellow card, then scores a simple tap in and takes off his shirt, gets a second booking, and off he's sent off. So, and the Liverpool manager, Anna Slot, did not refused to express his feelings towards Hugo Ekitike over the stupidity of what he had done. And so, in this particular sense, I do not expect it to be a high-scoring game. I expect it to be a game of few goals, perhaps a 1-0 victory for Liverpool. But like I said, Oliver Glasson has learned how to set up against some of these big teams, and Liverpool is one of those. In any case, they are 9 points in third place, tell you that they are one of the teams that are still unbeaten in the Premier League with 2 victories and 3 draws. So take nothing away from this Crystal Palace side. But for example, they forced Chelsea into a goalless draw on opening day, had a 1-0 draw against Nottingham Forest before beating up against Aston Villa by 3 goals to nil. Then shared the Spurs with Sunderland in a goalless draw and beat up against West Ham by 2 goals to 1, as we had predicted last weekend, or the prediction was a 2-0 victory. While Liverpool, on the other side, in comparison, have been perfect. They won all their 5 fixtures, beating up against Bournemouth, Newcastle, Arsenal, Burnley, and Everton by 2 goals to 1 in their last, Merseyside derby. And Hugo Ekitike was one of the goal scorers, as well as Ryan Gravenberch. So Liverpool, I do expect them to be dominant on the ball in terms of their own performance. But overall, while I expect them to be very, very dominant, I do expect Crystal Palace to have their own moments. Whether they can make those moments count is what does beg me the question. We know that they've been poked, and then there's going to be that context. Is Mark Cahill going to be in the right state of mind to play that game? And we know he was on the verge of completing a move to Liverpool, and then it was sort of, recalled. This is a game in which last season at Anfield, Ryan Gravenberch got himself a red card. In fact, Liverpool needed an 84th minute equalizer from Mo Salah to restore parity to cancel out Ismail Sarr's 9th minute goal in that game at Anfield. So it's usually quite the contest when it comes to the two sides, but more often than not, Liverpool have won away at Selhurst Park. It is at Anfield where they received the most headache from this Crystal Palace side. Do Liverpool get to drop their first points on match day 6? I get the feeling that they're motivated enough to go out and grind it out for another 1-0 kind of victory, kind of performance. Of course, Alson Ramsey-Speck and goal, Ibrahim Konate, Virgil van Dijk, Jeremy Frimpong, Milos Kakez, Ryan Gravenberch, Alexis McAllister, Dominic Szoboszlai, then Ryan Gravenberch, Mo Salah, and what's his name? Alexander Isak to start. That means that unfortunately Florian Wirtz gets to start off the bench. For me, the reason as why he starts off the bench is, how good Liverpool looked last weekend against Everton when they started with that, their midfield three from last season of McAllister, Gravenberch, and Szoboszlai. So that's how I would want to go about it. On the other side of Crystal Palace, Dean Henderson in that goal is a sort of a figure that you'd expect to have in that goal for Crystal Palace. You do expect players like Tariq Mitchell. This one I think scored. Was it last weekend? Yeah. So Chris Richards, Mackey, Lacrosse in that back three, because he tends to fill the back three. Daniel Munoz, he tends to pack the midfield with Daniel Munoz, Will Hughes, Adam Wharton, Tyrek Mitchell, and then Yeri Pino, and then Ismail Sarr, because he plays with the back three, then a belt of four. That's a double pivot, and those who play as wing backs, that's Daniel Munoz and Tyrek Mitchell, and then he plays with 2 number 10s. The kind of system that Ruben Amorim deploys at Manchester United. So, and then Joan Felipe Mateta to go ahead of them to lead the lines. So, for me, that's how I do expect that team to set up in that regard. And my feeling is that they get Liverpool scrap away a 1-0 kind of victory away at Selhurst Park. That's my prediction for that game between Liverpool and Crystal Palace. That will come at 5 p.m. on Saturday. Then the game between Manchester City and Burnley. I know that Burnley can prove to be a tough opponent. We saw that against Manchester United in their 3-2 loss, but then we saw them beat up against Sunderland by 2 goals to 0. We saw them give Liverpool the headache, and Liverpool needed a late penalty. Thanks to Mo Salah, who stepped up and combated to win that game by 1 goal to 0. So while they can be a bit of a a tricky side. I think Manchester City will rise to the occasion. I know they want to build some sort of momentum following, the Manchester Derby victory, then a 1-1 draw away to Arsenal, a victory against Huddersfield Town in midweek in that EFL Cup, third round and things like that. So they want to build that bit of momentum. The challenge for me is that Pep Guardiola constantly tinkers with his team. You never know what kind of starting 11 is going to start with. But the fact that Gianluigi Donnarumma is going to be in goal, maybe Joshko Guardiola and Ruben Diaz, but for the others, for the left back and right back, you never know. Midfield, it could be Rodri alongside Bernardo Silva and January Enders. On another day, he could be dropping one of those three, and maybe accommodating Nico Gonzalez, who played in midweek, Phil Foden, Jeremy Doku, and Brad Erling Haaland. For me, I expect that the team that's set up against Arsenal on the onset will be similar to the one that sets up against, Burnley and things like that. So I expect a 3-1 victory for Manchester City. Then in the early kickoff, Brentford up against Manchester United. Bit of a difficult game. Early kickoffs are usually very, very tricky to predict, as you may all know. But my expectation, again, Manchester United following that 2-1 victory over Chelsea, I will be sort of eager for the first time, to record 2 Premier League victories in a row. While Brentford, on the other side, have had their own struggles, although they are beyond what we had, and they're not beyond what we had anticipated coming into the season. You must give them some credit, because they managed to beat up against Nottingham Forest, they beat up against Aston Villa, they lost to Sunderland, shared the spoils with Chelsea, and lost to Fulham. While in comparison, Manchester United have 2 victories, 2 losses, and 1 draw. So those are the kinds of teams we are talking about. One is 17th and the other is 11th. And Manchester United will play knowing that if we win this particular game, then we get to, move into the into the first page of the table, into the top 10, wherever we may land. So there's going to be that bit of motivation. Matas Cunha is back fully fit. I expect Manchester United to start, of course, I expect no changes in format. Altai Baindia, Lenio, Matas Delit, and Luke Shaw, maybe. Then Patrick Togu, Nosa Mazoroi, then Manuel Ugarte alongside Bruno Fernandes, Matas Cunha, Brian Mbomo, and then Benjamin Sesko, to try and trouble this Brentford side, who know a thing or two about putting up against Manchester United, but because they know how to beat them at the GTEC Stadium. When you look at the last 3 meetings at the GTEC Stadium, Manchester United have not won any on any of those occasions at the GTEC Stadium. Last season, they got beat by 4 goals to 3. Then you rewind back last season, but it was a 1-1 draw. Then when you wind things further back, you find another heavy defeat for Manchester United, including that defeat in Eric Ten Hag's debut campaign with Manchester United. So it's a bit of a tricky one. If it were Old Trafford, I would have more confidence in the abilities of Manchester United that they could get all 3 points against Brentford. We know it's a much changed Brentford side, especially following the departure of Mark Flacken, the goalkeeper. Christian Nogard, the captain, was playing in that midfield role. When you look at Johan Wissa, when you look at Brian Mbomo, all who have left, the club and things like that, you look at it and think to yourself, are these players capable of, forcing United into a bad result? I thought Shed is one of those players that Manchester United will have to worry about. They do start with Kelleher in goal. They have Collins, they have Van de Berg, they have Coyote, they have Lewis Potter, Damsgaard, Jordan Henderson playing in that pivot. He's been quite a decent servant so far for them, and his leadership has sort of shown. More Lieko, then Thiago and Shed, Kevin Shed, yes. That's the kind of system that they're playing with, a 4-3-2, Yes, with a 4-3-2 kind of system in that sense. But oh, why do I feel something is not adding up? Something is not adding up. That's 5 plus. Anyway, they tend to play with a 5-3-2 kind of formation. Yes, 5-3 kind of formation is what they tend to go with Pinnock in that defense as well. So United will have to sort of combat that. And while United, this XG is very promising and things like that, uh, when it comes to their conversion, it's not been so good. We're talking about, Brentford side who lost by 3 goals to 1 in their last league outing against Fulham, while Manchester United have all the motivation for having beaten up against Chelsea by 2 goals to 1. So that's what they carry into this game. Will they win? I'm not solely convinced. I'm going for a 1-1 draw between the two sides. I'm sorry, Manchester United fans, if that rubs you the wrong way, but that's my gut feeling in terms of that game. Then quickly to Chelsea, the Chelsea game up against Brighton. Brighton, I'm not yet really convinced. They only have one victory this season, and that victory came in a 2-1 win against Manchester City. Last weekend, they crumbled, squandered a 2-0 lead against Tottenham Hotspur and were forced into a 2-2 draw. So things have not really happened for them. Chelsea have only recorded one loss. They've had 2 draws and 2 victories. Which puts them at about 8 points so far this season. So yeah, I'm not totally convinced that Brighton win. Chelsea is a bit of confusing. They're going to be without Cole Palmer, who is going to be out for about a period of 2 to 3 weeks. So that's not good. Their goalkeeper, Robert Sanchez, not the best of goalkeepers out there, given that kind of blunder that he committed at Manchester United to get that red card in the first opening 5 minutes of the game. So much to the fury of Enzo Maresca, but you still expect them to set up with a very strong side. When you look at Philip Jorgensen in goal, now you never know whether it's going to be Trevor Chalobah and Levi Cole, and Wesley Fofana or Sin Adarabio, Richie James. For me, I would put Richie James at right back, even though Enzo Maresca prefers to play him sometimes in midfield. But I'll go with Richie James if I want to win this game. At right back, I'll go with Marco Correa at left back. I'll go with Tosin Adarabio alongside Trevor Chalobah. Midfield, obvious, Moises Caicedo. I'll go with Enzo Fernandez. Actually, I'll go with Moises Caicedo, Andre Santos, Enzo Fernandez as a 10. I'll go with William Estavao. I'll go with Pedro Neto and Joao Pedro. That's how I would set up against that Brighton side, who have the likes of Yakuba Minte, Danny Welbeck, Yassine Ayari, who are all capable of, hurting any opponent on a given day. And when you look at the previous meetings between the two sides, it's not very encouraging for either side, because even though Chelsea have the lion's share of victory at 3 and lost 2 on the last 5 counts, last season they got beat by 3 goals to 0 at the Amex Stadium. Now, but it's going to be a Stamford Bridge game, which they won by 4 goals to 2 last season. Of course, they had the strength of Cole Palmer, who scored the hat trick, actually scored all 4 goals in that game. So while Carlos Baleba and Rote scored for Brighton. So Carlos Baleba will need to up his game. Excuse me. Carlos Baleba will need to up his game if they are to get a decent result, at least a draw from Stamford Bridge. But I'm going for a scrappy 2-1 win for Chelsea in this one. That's what I'm going for. So those are my predictions. In the other games, Crystal Palace, no, I've already given that. Leeds versus Bournemouth. I'm going for a 2-1 victory for Bournemouth. Nottingham Forest versus Sunderland. I'm going for a draw, 1-1. Tottenham versus Wolverhampton Wanderers, bit of a difficult one. If there's any team that knows how 1-2 well to beat up against Tottenham Hotspur, is Wolverhampton Wanderers. In fact, Tottenham have not beaten Wolves on any single occasion in the last, I think, 5 meetings. They've not beaten against Wolverhampton Wanderers. They've lost 4 and drawn 1. But we're talking about a different Hotspurs with Thomas Frank in charge. I get the feeling they may get their joy for the first time against Wolverhampton Wanderers in many, many seasons, because Wolverhampton Wanderers have had a horrible start to their campaign. Things are not happening for Vitor Pereira. That's their manager. So, I'm going 2-1 Tottenham. 2-1 Tottenham. I hope they do not let me down, because they are very capable of that. Then Aston Villa on Sunday up against Fulham. Villa have had a troublesome start to the season. They will come into this game with the positivity of having beaten up against Bologna on Thursday in the Europa League by a goal to nil. That goal scored by John McGinn, while Ollie Watkins, in the show of lack of confidence, missed a penalty. So I'm going for a draw. Another draw. Maybe 1-1 or 2-2. Then I've given you already my prediction. It's a draw for Newcastle, Arsenal. And then on Monday, Everton against West Ham. West Ham have had a poor start to the season. David Moyes will be up against his former side. We'll part ways with him before he reunited with Everton. I'm going for Everton winning that game by 2-1. So Everton win, Liverpool to win, Chelsea to win, Man City to win, all the others are draws. Spurs to win, all the others are draws. Like literally. Anyways, do let me know what your opinions are in that regard, or what your thoughts will be for those games. Then the Madrid derby will be on at tomorrow at at 5:15. Beautiful game to a one that you want to not to miss out on. I do not know whether I'll be able to catch it. I'm still not yet sure where I'll be catching those games, but my hope will be to try and watch that game. I do not know if I'll be successful, but I'll try. I'll try to watch the Madrid derby. I mean, Atletico de Madrid have had a poor start to the season. Yes, they've only lost, I think, probably one. They've had one too many draws. They managed to win their last game by 3-2. They concede a lot of goals, and yet Real Madrid are not conceding too many. They're scoring. Mbappe is in good form. What's his name? Vinicius Junior squad with squad with the Trivela, So yeah. Anyways, we will see. We will see what will happen. But given my bit of a poor health condition, allow me to wrap it here and wish you guys a wonderful night. It's been a pleasure engaging with LFC. I know he popped on here quite quickly and left for whatever his reasons are. If we can, I do not know we'll be able to get another one of a live broadcast, perhaps until tomorrow. Have yourselves a blessed night, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye for now.